Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Elemental Shaman tier sets for 11.2 and Season 3 of The War Within. And yes, I did say tier sets because we have two of them. One if you are spec'd into Farseer, and one if you are spec'd into Stormbringer. And it's just the same gear, it'll switch over based on which hero tree you have selected. So we have two tier sets to talk about. And we are going to be talking about the Farseer one first, so we're going to start off with this. And I just want to say before we get into it, it does seem that Farseer is definitely aimed more towards single target, as it has been for the entirety of the expansion, and Stormbringer is more in line with doing mass amounts of damage to AoE or Mythic Plus. That seems to be the niches that they've kind of fallen into, and I think Blizzard is okay with that because I do think that they want to see play represented across all of the hero trees, at least in some form or function somewhere in the game. So that seems to be the direction they're going for. I will say that Stormbringer is extremely powerful right now, though I do expect that to see some type of nerf or change. But it is extremely powerful right now that maybe Stormbringer is on the up and up for also being seen play in single target as well. But we'll see how that goes. For right now, let's go ahead and start off with talking about Farseer, and we'll start off with the two-piece. The two-piece is Ancestral Swiftness, summons an empowered ancestor for 15 seconds, and that deals 10% increased damage and healing. So the biggest thing here, there's not too much to talk about here, but if I use my Primordial Wave and Ancestral Swiftness combo, so I'll go ahead and do that now. I'll get 3 ancestors. So one from Ancestral Swiftness, one from Primordial Wave, and one from the tier set. And one of these will last 15 seconds, the other two lasting the normal 6 seconds. So this is the only one that's extra powerful, that 10% extra power in duration. Nothing crazy to write home just by itself. It just kind of does what it does, and we can kind of move on. The next part is the 4-piece, which is Ancestral Swiftness reduces the cast time of your spells by 25%, the mana cost of your spells by 25%, and increases the recharge rate of Lava Burst by 50% for 8 seconds. So all of those things happening for 8 seconds. And on the surface, I actually like the idea of this. Basically, every 30 seconds, you get a small damage window of 8 seconds that you want to try to get a little burst out of. You get a little bit faster casting speed, a little bit more lava burst might happen in that period of time, just kind of helping you along with your damage. There's no damage increase here, it's just that cast speed increased. So just a little bit of a damage window every 30 seconds for 8 seconds, but nothing super crazy. On the surface, I think that's fine. But the big problem here is that it's cast speed and not haste. Now, haste would have a whole nother amount of issues of getting like way too hasted, where we're, especially towards the end of the season, having a ton of haste is going to be something that's going to be, it's going to start really devaluing haste. I don't want to get too deep into that right now, but if it did just say 25% increased haste, we'd have to start putting haste into other things as well, or something other than haste. Not a huge problem, but the real problem here is just the fact that it says cast speed. Cast speed does not affect instant cast spells. So basically, for a normal Farseer build, the only thing this is affecting is your Lightning Bolt cast and your Lava Burst cast. And that is pretty much it. And those are hard casted only. So right off the bat, when you cast Primordial Wave and Ancestral Swiftness, and you usually are casting these two things at the same time because they've got the same cooldown of 30 seconds, Ancestral Swiftness gives you an instant cast right off the bat by being at Ancestral Swiftness. You're also getting a Lava Surge cast, or Lava Surge proc, off of the Primordial Wave. So right away, every 30 seconds, 2 of those first casts are going to be instant cast during that 8-second window. On top of that, your Stormkeeper is on a minute cooldown. That will come up every other Primordial Wave Ancestral Swiftness window. Every other one, you'll also get 2 casts of Lightning Bolt that will also be instant. On top of that, if you need to reapply Flame Shock, that's an instant cast. If you get an Ice Fury proc, that's an instant cast. If you need to move and use a Frost Shock or something like that, that's an instant cast. And if you need to spin Maelstrom and you need to use your Earth Shock, that's an instant cast. All of these things that you're doing most of the time are not going to be affected by the cast speed increase of the 4 set. So in just a normal window, let's just only use our Stormkeeper. We won't even use Lust or anything like that. We'll just use our Stormkeeper and our Primordial Wave and Ancestral Swiftness. We go into the window. I have a Lava Burst, a Lightning Bolt, a Lava Burst, a Lightning Bolt. 1 cast here, another cast here, maybe one more. So like 3 maybe in that 8-second window. But that I didn't have to use a spender during that period of time for that specific scenario. I didn't have to press Ice Fury. That didn't proc. All these things are instant casts, and really we have only two options in most situations. Like if you're running Elemental Blast for whatever reason, that would also be affected by the cast time reduction. But most of what Ellie has to do, especially during a Primordial Wave and Ancestral Swiftness window, a lot of those casts are going to be instant cast, and they're not going to be affected by this force set. Again, this is a good direction. I'm fine with the direction of having a small burst window on a pretty short cooldown of 30 seconds. I think that's fine. But cast time just does not fit with the Ancestral Swiftness window. Ancestral Swiftness by itself is already, just the button that activates this is giving you an instant cast that is not affected by the tier set, essentially. So right off the bat, just by that alone, it's not getting any value off of itself. So that's something I think would change. It could even go the opposite way, is a joke that I've seen people say, is that if instead of affecting your casted spells, if it did something for your instant spells, like cooldown reduction or more damage or whatever have you, there would be more interplay with instant cast spells than there is with casted spells. So they could just flip it. I think the easiest fix is just to make this haste. I do think there are issues with that as well, but I like the general idea. I like the general idea of having it do like an 8-second window every 30 seconds. That's not overly powerful. I think that's totally fine. It's just that the cast time of spells is just not really doing much in favor of like making this an interesting tier set, because we just aren't casting that many spells during that window. Again, I hope that they cook with this and like change it, do something else with it, because I do like the idea overall. It's just not going to work with casted spells. So that's pretty much it there. It doesn't really affect anything past that. Interesting idea, just not necessarily good in execution. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Stormbringer tier set next. All right, so now we're in a Stormbringer build. We're just going to be using the normal Mythic Plus build we've been using in Season 2. And we're going to go ahead and start talking about the 2 set. So the 2 set is Ascendance has a 100% chance to grant a charge of Tempest, and every 6 Awakened Storms now activates Ascendance for 6 seconds. So Awakened Storms is something that just you build up over time by just playing the game, essentially. Either Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning will build these stacks. Every 3 of them that you get, you also proc a Tempest as well. So every time you get to 6 of these Awakened Storms, so every second Tempest you generate will also proc Ascendance. And Ascendance will also give you a charge of Tempest as well. So if that sounds really powerful, it's because it is. It's kind of insanely powerful, and we'll have to talk about this as a whole. Let's go ahead and talk about the 4 set as well, and then we can talk about everything. The 4 set is nature damage increased by 3%, and Ascendance empowers your next 2 Tempests to gather a storm above that target that deals 1.4 million nature damage to its primary target, and reduce damage to nearby enemies after 1.5 seconds. That fall off damage in the AoE is about 70%. Or so, based on what we have figured out so far, around 70% as an AoE around the main target. So let's just talk about how busted this is. First off, the Ascendance proccing a Tempest. This seems to be happening off of DRE procs of Ascendance, as well as its own 2-piece proc. Now that might not be intended. There is precedent for it not being intended. The 2-piece in Season 2 was much the same way. I believe it's the 2-piece in Season 2. It might have been the 4-piece, but it used to be in PTR, for the previous PTR, it would be that whenever you proc Ascendance, not just the hard cast of Ascendance, but DRE as well, it would also spawn a Storm Elemental, and then that was changed to only happen when you actually press the button Ascendance. I would not be surprised if that is also changed, but currently, as it works right now, it does proc that Tempest. That being said, there are some bugs with that, because of course there is. You won't proc that Tempest if you are already in Ascendance when it procs. It'll only happen if you're not in Ascendance, and then going into Ascendance, you'll get that Tempest charge. The same thing for the 4-piece, the Ascendance empowering your next 2 Tempests to gather a storm. That will only happen if you're not in Ascendance, and then you go into Ascendance, it'll give you that empowerment. If you are currently in Ascendance and then proc Ascendance, it won't give that to you. So some bugs to work out there, but the big thing here is just it's insanely powerful being able to just guarantee these Tempest charges. You're just constantly in a window of doing a ton of damage. So we can just go ahead and look at it right here. So I'll just do a normal kind of opener here. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. But you'll notice that I already have a Tempest. And we're just going to kind of start spinning things like a normal Ascendance. The big thing is when we actually start proccing other things during this Ascendance or like right after it. So like nothing too crazy right now, but the second we proc another one, we're just going to be having so much to do because we'll also have those Tempests that will come out as well. Of course, it's not doing it when I'm trying to show it. There we go. So immediately I proc Ascendance and get 2 Tempest charges. So we're going to have so much extra damage with those procs. And that was either, I believe that proc happened because of the 2-piece, but it'll also happen when we proc DRE. So there's another proc. We have two charges of Tempest as well. Oh my god, I can't even keep up with it. Another 2 right there. See, like right here, I've got 2 charges of Stormkeeper plus 2 Tempest charges. So we're just like constantly overloaded with Tempest as well. I did not handle this very well at all either because I've had so much that needs to take priority, but I only have so much to do. There's another one. So another 2 Tempest charges as well as getting through. Oh my god, and then I procced another one. So I'm just like, you're just constantly flooded with Tempests as well as Ascendances. So you've got so much extra that you want to try to do during those Ascendance windows. Ideally, you want to be trying to get both of those Tempests out as well as still keep up with your spenders as well. Another 2 Tempests. That was just from Awakened Storms as well as building them naturally from the way that Tempest works, just getting to 300 Maelstrom. So you're just constantly getting Tempest. There's another Tempest right there. And now I've also got my Ascendance back up. I can go back into another Ascendance window. So that immediately gave me a Tempest. It's so much all the time. And it can be a lot to keep up with, but the amount of extra damage is kind of nuts. And there's another proc right there, so another 2 Tempests as well. And you're just constantly, you're going to have to be paying so much attention to Tempest because Tempest is still only going to be giving you 2 charges at max. So you need to make sure that you're getting rid of them ASAP so you're not overcapping your Tempest, which can absolutely happen. On top of all that, you're also proccing that 4-piece, which is making that target a lightning rod, dealing 1.4 million damage and doing that splash damage as well. I mean, keep in mind this is just on 4 targets. I don't even have any consumables or anything like that, and I'm very easily staying around like 11 to 15 million. I've had some attempts when I was messing around with this. Obviously, I wasn't playing perfectly there because I was trying to talk at the same time as that. But like when you're locked in doing this, you can like pretty much maintain a pretty high uptime on just insane damage. Obviously, don't pay too much attention to the numbers. This is just PTR. Not all of my gear is up to date yet, but the just insane amount of Tempest procs that you're getting, and a lot of times that's overlapping with Ascendance. Ascendance is just an insane cooldown by itself, and then being able to do Tempest within that guaranteed a lot. It's a ton of damage. This tier set is probably, I don't know exactly what the numbers are going to be for it if it were to stay exactly how it is, but it's a ton of damage. So I do expect this to change. Again, like I said, that bug where if you're already in Ascendance, when it procs, not getting that Tempest, not getting that Empowerment, I don't know which version of it they want to have. My assumption is going to be that it will not work for the procs and will probably only work for the naturally casted Ascendance, whether that's 2 or 3 minutes. That's going to be my assumption because that's what they went with for Season 2. That will definitely pull back on the damage quite a bit. But even still, that just that part of the 2 set of every 6 Awakened Storms granting you Ascendance, that by itself, without anything else, is still extremely powerful, especially for Mythic Plus. Like, if that's all it said, is that every 6 Awakened Storms you get procs Ascendance, that's still an insane buff just by itself, especially for Mythic Plus. So, I think we should really expect this to change probably substantially. I wouldn't be surprised if they increase the stacks of Awakened Storms to like 8 or 9 even for it to proc Ascendance. That would not surprise me. and then as well make everything only happen during the actual hard cast of Ascendance. That would make sense. For everything else, for all the Tempest stuff, that would make the most sense to me. I would expect to see that, as well as some additional damage tuning as well. That's what I'm expecting. Again, one thing I want to keep everyone to keep in mind is that you'd rather have the tier set get nerfed than the class itself get nerfed, and then that move forward into the future. We don't want our tier set to be so powerful that it ends up getting the spec itself nerfed. So we don't want Elemental to get nerfed. I'd rather have the tier set fixed or nerfed, or at least brought back in line with the other classes. There's a lot of classes that have tier sets that are extremely powerful right now, so I do want to make sure that that's also mentioned as well. But I think a lot of these are a little bit way too powerful, so I think a lot of specs need to have their tier sets pulled back. Again, this is just really, really powerful. But hey, if they want to have like the end of the expansion, everyone's just popping off constantly, then hell, you know, if that's the direction they want to go, as long as it's still balanced against all the other classes, that's fine. But this is just an insanely powerful tier set. It makes the Farseer one look very whatever in comparison. It's something that's so powerful that you might even see this come up in a single target situation. But that being said, I think Farseer is still positioned to be better when it comes to single target fights, and when boss damage matters more than anything else. So don't expect this to be what end up being the go-to for raid, but who knows? If it stays this much more powerful, that ability to proc Ascendance that often, as well as just getting that many Tempest, maybe it will sneak in there and we become just Stormbringer Shaman again. I wouldn't necessarily mind that too much, but I wouldn't expect it at all. So those are the big takeaways. Right now, Farseer needs a little bit of a change. I like the idea of the up and down, the little damage windows for 8 seconds after Ancestral Swiftness. I think that's a fine idea. I don't think there's anything wrong with it from a conceptual idea. Just the cast time nature of it is something that definitely needs to be fixed. And this one for Stormbringer is very hectic with how many Tempest casts that you have, as well as getting Ascendance so much more often. One number that I heard thrown out there was it's around like a 35% uptime on Ascendance. That's a little crazy, I think, to say. That's a little crazy. But, you know, I think with a little bit of tweaks, like, I think this could still be a very interesting set without it being so over the top. You don't want to devalue the feeling of being in Ascendance by having Ascendance happen too often. But I just want to say that I do like the fact that it's like you can actually track the Awakened Storms. You know how many you've gotten. You know when it's coming. You have this idea of, like, you don't know exactly when DRE is going to proc. Or not DRE, but the 2 set is going to proc. You're not 100% sure when it's going to proc, but you know it'll be, like, within reason in an area when it's coming. Unlike Deeply Rooted Elements, where a Deeply Rooted Elements just kind of happens. You know it's going to happen after a spender, but you're not sure when it's going to happen. And with the delayed nature, for those of you who haven't played with Stormbringer too much, the delayed nature of when you actually get a stack of Awakened Storms, sometimes it'll happen in the middle of the next cast. So sometimes you'll be proccing Ascendance while you're halfway through like a Chain Lightning cast. It's really funky, but yeah, that's kind of how we're at right now. Very powerful. I expect everything to change over the course of the next couple months, so feel free to stay right here. I'll be updating as soon as I can if anything changes, as well as next week we will be starting raid testing. I will be doing all of that again, as I typically do. I'll also be streaming it live on Twitch at twitch.tv/ridmark if you're interested in that. And hopefully this time around I'll have some updated videos on how Elemental is doing in the raid testing. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.